Um, hey, everybody, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be in this space and to share with you today. So let me go ahead and share my screen and we can get started. So yes, we're gonna talk a little bit about tapping into your passions in order to have broader success in the mathematical community in particular. And so I want to share a bit of my story and then just leave some time at the end for us to have a conversation about how we all might tap into some of our passions. As Dwight mentioned, I did my undergrad at Spelman and got a master's in math at Howard University. I will say that Spelman was the first time that I met Black women mathematicians. And so for me, it was really a transformational time in my journey because I, throughout high school and, really didn't know that Black people did mathematics and really had not met very many, if at all, African Americans who had PhDs in math, advanced degrees in math. And so to get to Spelman and to see faculty, here I am with the late Dr. Etta Faulkner in that bottom picture there, to have faculty, women faculty who had PhDs who'd sort of crossed this boundary. That was really an amazing opportunity to be taught and to be mentored by them. And so Spelman really allowed me to envision myself, not just as a mathematician, but I'll say even as a chemist or a physicist, there was just such diversity on our faculty that all of our students got to see themselves in these professions. And this was really how I started to see myself as a mathematician through these women. My junior year at Spelman, Dr. Faulkner was talking to me about grad school. And I was just like, listen, my family's gonna be so excited when I come home with this bachelor's degree. Like that's, that is the pinnacle. And so she was like, you should think about grad school. And so I started doing a bit of research about it. And that was when I saw that there were like less than 100 Black women who had PhDs in math. This was in I graduated in 2000. And so I was like, wow, I could graduate in 5 or 6 years and still be in the top 100. And so that really also motivated me to continue that journey. I started a PhD program at Howard University, loved my time at Howard, but I took a stats course and that was when I really fell in love with statistics. And so I transferred to Rice University. I got to spend some time at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, JPL, and I spent a summer at the National Security Agency, NSA. And, I think JPL really prepared me to think about doing research and to sort of imagine myself doing research. I worked in Lonnie Lane's lab and we worked on the Europa mission project, which is actually coming out in October of 2024, I think. So it's still, one of their current missions. So it's neat to see that something I worked on so long ago is almost coming to fruition. And so Lonnie was a really wonderful mentor because he invited all of his summer students to the table because he felt like we brought these really fresh ideas and he wanted to hear from us and he wanted our perspective. It was also, it was a very different environment from Spelman, right? Being in California, being at JPL, and so being a summer research student, that was all new to me. And it was almost sort of like, what graduate school could be like doing that research day in and day out. Claudia was my mentor there. So she also worked at JPL. And so her job was just to like mentor me and she would like take me out for lunch and take me out to get my hair done. And I really looked up to Claudia in the same way that I looked up to my professors at Spelman, because again, she was an example of who I could become. And so I left JPL thinking like, oh, I can come here, I can work at JPL, in beautiful Southern California, be with Claudia, be in this environment that was really so accepting and just welcoming and really wanted you to bring your knowledge to the table, whatever form that knowledge came in. Like JPL was excited to have it. So I really enjoyed my time there. I also worked at the NSA, but I can't tell you what I did or else I'd have to kill you. I'm joking, I wouldn't kill you, but you have to say that, right? When you work there. Okay. I transferred to Rice University and finished my PhD in statistics. So this was graduation day with folks that I graduated with. And there I am with my advisor, Dr. Kathy Enzer. And then I put a more recent picture of us up there in the upper right corner because we were at the NORMS conference together a few months ago. And so it's great to still keep in touch with her and check in with her. You'll also see that there's a little guy in tow. 2 weeks before graduation, our oldest son Josiah was born. And so it was a productive time, literally. But that was a really fun time to finish and to have him to show for it as well. And I've been at Harvey Mudd ever since. I applied to the math department right after graduation and have been here on the faculty at Harvey Mudd. One thing that I love about our math faculty is that we really want our students to see themselves reflected in the mathematical sciences. We really want our faculty to look like our students and the students be able to see themselves in our department. And so we really work hard to make sure that our student representation shows up in our faculty representation. And I think, as this picture kind of shows, we really have a lot of fun together. We really do enjoy working together as colleagues and just hanging out with each other. So that's been a really great opportunity for me. I want to transition and talk a little bit about ways that I've tried to combine my passion with the things that I get paid to do on a daily basis. And so I think for some of us, this can be challenging because when when I was finishing grad school and thinking about the traditional sort of tenure track next step, I couldn't necessarily see how the things that I love to do and the things that I was passionate about necessarily fit into this mold, right? And so I'll just share with you a few ways that I've tried to really incorporate some of my passions into my teaching, into my research, into my work. Each year, I teach an intro probability and statistics course. There are usually multiple sections. And so Susan Martinosi there and I have co-taught this course for years. And, one of the goals at Harvey Mudd College for all of our students is to have them leave thinking about their impact on society. How is it that the work that they do impacts society around them, and to be thoughtful about that, intentionally thoughtful. And so about 5 or 6 years ago, we wanted to revise our intro prob stat course to help students be thoughtful about how statistical ideas and statistical decisions can impact society. And a component of this course is to have students do a final project. And so we revamped our final project to have students look at the New York stop, question, and frisk data set, because we really wanted to kind of challenge them to think about that impact, what impact it had, have them do some of that background research, but then talk about it as a class and engage in this conversation. I will say for me, it was a bit of an intimidating process because it's something that, as a mom of 3 boys, and a husband, I think about how they're viewed in society. And so looking at this data in some ways felt really disheartening, but it was also good for my students to talk about it and to go through this data. So for those of you who may not know, New York stop, question, and frisk was a policy in the early 2000s in New York City, where a police officer could stop and question or frisk anyone just because. And so one of the goals of the program, I'm sorry, let me stop the vacuum cleaner from going. I'll be right back. The house is getting clean. Awesome. Okay, we're back. So yes, an officer could stop you and search you just cause. Yeah. And so when you look at the population, for example, in this slide, so 23% of the New York City population is Black, but they represented 53% of stops, right? And 47.3% white, Asian, Native American, they were 13% of stops, and 29% Latino, who represented 33.7% of stops. And so what I was really wanting my students to think about is, how did this affect different people, right? Was it fair? Was it equitable? And is there anything that comes out of the data that they could look at, right? So if you look at the concentration of stops by precinct here on your left, so the lighter blue, there were fewer stops in those precincts. And then the more it gets red, the more stops that were done in those different precincts or different boroughs in New York City. You can also look at the concentration of racial concentration in New York City. And just a couple of things to highlight that my students found is that in areas, like look at Northern Staten Island, in areas that had more diversity, you tended to see more concentration of stops, whereas in areas that were less diverse, you saw less stops taking place. And so this really made my students question, well, you know, what is it that causes an officer to stop you and to frisk you and to search you and to look for a weapon? The data set was rich. And so, you know, it's a massive data set. One of the variables in the data set was the period of observation across the borough. So this was like, how long does an officer stop to look at you before they decide, I think I want to frisk that person, right? You'll notice the peaks, right? So those are sort of estimates, about 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, right? And so you can imagine it probably wasn't exactly 5 minutes, but that's just sort of a nice round number to round to. I do want to draw your attention to the about 1,000 stops where it was like, I looked at this person for a minute and was like, you know what? Let me frisk them because I just don't know. Because it makes you wonder, and it made my students question, like, what is it that you can gather when you look at someone in a minute that makes you want to frisk them and search them for a weapon? And often those judgments are really a result of our bias, right? And so I was like, hey class, look around the room. You got 60 seconds. Who are you gonna frisk? Who's got a weapon, right? I've given somebody a knife. Who is it? And when you think about it, you really don't know. And I think that's what my students were seeing in the data, is that these short times that you're watching someone, often what determines whether or not you frisk them are your biases against different groups of people. So this was a way for me to sort of bring my passion for justice, my passion for wanting to help students think about, you know, not just sort of their place in society, but how their place affects other people, and do that in the classroom as well. I've also worked to try to, you know, use my passion to build the pipeline, especially in the mathematical sciences. Being a Black woman coming through math and statistics, you know, I often looked around and said, well, where are the other people of color? Where are the other women? Where are the other African Americans? And having gotten here now, I really want to make sure that that pipeline is coming and is full. And so one of my passions has been, how do we reach back and really encourage that next generation to follow in our footsteps, so to speak. I'll say that this started probably my second year, I think, at Harvey Mudd. And I had mentors who were so well-meaning. They were so well-meaning, y'all. And they were like, Talithia, like, don't do this stuff. Whatever you do, get tenure, and then you can do outreach. Like, get tenure and then join SOCNIS. You know, I mean, it was just like, whatever you do, like, we need you to be tenured. We need more women tenured. We need people of color. And so I think I had, you know, senior mentors who were well-meaning, but were like, this is not what you should focus on. You know, this is not what's going to get you tenure. And yeah, I felt like, but this is what I'm passionate about. Like, this is what I want to change. This is how I want to really contribute to the mathematical community. So instead of kind of taking it all on myself, I reached out to some local organizations. Sacred Sisters is a local nonprofit group that mentors women in Southern California. And so I reached out to them, different churches, different fraternities and sororities, and said, you know, I want to do this conference for girls of color, and how can we work together? Like, I get that this isn't my job technically, but this is something that I'm passionate about, and I want to make a difference in, at least in our local community. And so we worked together to create this conference. We partnered with Claremont High School. This is a picture of the Claremont High School guidance counselors. And I want you to see this because Claremont this is the district where the Claremont colleges are. So it's a pretty wealthy district. But the high school is one of the top high schools in the state. And so Nikki Mitchell, there in the back row on the right, I said, Nikki, I want you to come to this conference, and I want you to do a session for our parents, and I want you to give them all the resources that you give to our students. Because often our parents were coming from neighboring, you know, communities that were not as well resourced as Claremont High. And so, you know, we started putting together this event, and I thought, well, there's got to be folks on campus that can help. Let me go across across the mall down and see what other offices might help me put on this conference. And so I reached out to our Office of Communications and Marketing. And this was really key because often faculty aren't partnering with folks on the other side of campus, right? Often we're sort of like academic, maybe something for our students, but rarely am I like in the communications office or, talking to them about marketing. But they were really great in helping me put together a website, hiring a photographer, thinking about how to market the events, putting it in different papers, putting it on our website. And so I found it really helpful to talk through this idea because they were really able to elevate it and publicize it in a way that I think I wouldn't have done had I not gone to that office. While I was over there, I'm like, well, since I'm seeing folks on this side of campus, let's just stop by advancement, So Dan Macaluso, who was our VP for advancement at the time, I chatted with him. I'm like, I've got this idea. I want to bring girls to campus. I want to expose them to opportunities in STEM. I need money. Like they got to eat, maybe breakfast and lunch and a breakout snack and so Dan was really great because he's like, hey, we've got potential trustees and donors who would really be interested in supporting this type of an event. We could invite them to come to the event. It might be a great way to reconnect with local alumni, to have them come and share. And so it was really great. So many people wanted to help. And I think initially when I thought like, oh, I'm passionate about underrepresented girls in STEM, initially, I think I felt like, I've got to do this on my own. I've got to put together this and do this. And I found that the more I reached out, the more people were excited to contribute. Like the more they were like, yes, how can we help? Yes, we can cover food, we can get this. And so it really pays to reach out and build these connections because you might be surprised who's able to help you. Harvey Mudd also has an Office of Community Engagement led by Gabriella. And so Gabriella was amazing because she already had these connections to local high school counselors in the area. She knew how to partner with these groups. And so she really leaned on her connections to bring girls to the event. She would help schools get buses to bus girls, in on a Saturday. She showed up to work the event every year that we've had it. And she did signs, y'all. I just assumed like, when they get to campus, they're just gonna know where to go. They know where to walk, hello. But no, she came with signs and I was like, oh, right. A lot of these folks, even though we are in their backyard, had never been to our campus. And so it's amazing to see people walk around and wonder like, wow, I'm on this college campus and they live, 3 or 4 miles away from you. So Gabriella really sort of helped us do that. The conference has since been featured in several news outlets. Here we were featured in Forbes about ways that we work to increase opportunities for minorities in STEM. So you'll see some pictures of our girls and often they do experiments, one year we had a computer science prof come in and they did like hacking. Another year, Rachel Levy did a soap and slopes. And so I think this was the soap and slopes one that Ray did. And so we really just try to give them hands-on opportunities and ways for them to engage and get excited about the mathematical sciences. We were also written up in the local news. So we invited, again, partnering with communications, they invited these local, local reporters to come and report about the event. And so of course that was really exciting to see how the local community got excited about what we were doing on campus. I think it brought a really positive perception to Harvey Mudd in the community, right? For them to be excited about this work that we're doing. Our communications office, put together the website, attached it to the HMC website so that people could go, they could register and sign up. And so this was really a great help for me because, A, I don't just know website design and, B, I have a whole other job to do. So just to have people who were really excited about the event, excited to help put it on and really help bring their expertise to the table is what made it a success. And so I really want to drive that home. It wasn't just like, oh, that's Talithia's baby. It's really like, this is a community-driven event that they really helped to showcase. We started a campaign And this was some years ago, and I was really excited to see us get featured in the campaign. So look in the very bottom there, that little bitty picture of me holding the microphone. And so I was like, if we're in the campaign, like that means that the college owns this, right? Like if you're gonna say, donate money because we do these great things, then that means that you also support these great things. And so I'm really excited that the college has taken on support of this conference every year in terms of facilities and, food, and has just really made it a part of our mark and our contribution to the local community as well. So just some pictures. This is one of the years. Again, we've done this now for 12 years straight. We had a Zoom one the past couple of years. And so we really worked to maintain these relationships with the girls when we invite them to campus. So this is just a picture for one of our years for the young ladies that came and some of their parents there in the back. It's also great because I get my students to volunteer, right? So they get to volunteer and do just, sessions with the girls or just chat with them during lunch, help them get around in different spaces on campus, move between workshops. And often it's hard to help my students understand privilege, right? Because when you're born in privilege and you have privilege, you often don't see that. It's hard to see that. And it's hard for people to tell you that you have it. I mean, even my kids have privilege. But I noticed how some of my students were changing after they volunteered, because they would just be like talking to these girls and, they were so bright and just so, eager to learn more about science and math. And then my students would be like, oh, so what AP classes are you signed up for? And, they'd be like, well, what's AP? And they'd be like, oh, your school must have IB. Like, what IB classes are you going to take? And they'd be like, no, we don't have that either. And so often my students were able to see like, oh, a lot of these girls are in districts that don't have AP courses, don't have IB courses, aren't getting the preparation needed to even apply to some of the more selective colleges and universities, Harvey Mudd included, right? And strictly because of their zip code, and the types of schools that are in their neighborhood and their community. And so for me, it was really special for my students to sort of see that and to have compassion for it and think, well, how can I help? What more can I do to really make sure that these girls are prepared to go into STEM fields, given the communities that they're coming from? Each year there are three sort of components. Like we try to give each young lady an opportunity to say something in the space, to own the space. I think this year we were asking, what's your inspiration equation? So like, what is it that inspires you? And can you put that into an equation? So they had to come up with an equation of their inspiration, and then they got to share that. And so it was really neat to sort of see the parts of them that they identify with, that they put, and how they put those different components into a mathematical equation. In the top corner there, this is Melissa. She's actually an HMC alum. Melissa comes back every year to talk to our girls, to share about how she uses engineering and mathematics in the work that she does. And so she did a workshop for our girls. And then in the bottom corner, we get local, women to come as mentors to really give them an opportunity to have in-depth one-on-one conversations with our young ladies. And so this, for me, sort of grew from my experience with Claudia, right? I have these summers at JPL. I'm in Lonnie's lab. I've got Claudia as a mentor. She's amazing, and I'm asking her all these questions like, well, how do you do this? Well, what are qualifying exams? Well, and so I wanted to give my girls an opportunity to talk to, women and ask them any questions, like ask them how they got, where they are, what roadblocks were along the way. A lot of my girls wanted to know, like, what is it like to be smart? And how do you date when you're smart? Because, at some of their schools, it was like the smart girls were the nerdy girls, were the girls who did not get asked to prom, And so it's like, how do I get asked to prom, but also take honors classes, or what, And so just to sort of see like what's on the heart of a 14, 15, 16-year-old, what kind of questions they have, how they still want to fit in, to their high school environment, but how they can sort of, be pulled to say, we want to stretch you a little bit further and we want you to see yourself in these spaces as well. And so those are really wonderful opportunities. Yes, Mo was there too. Mo was like my honorary co-workshop planner. So the first year we did this workshop, I just thought like, oh, parents are gonna come and they're gonna drop their daughters off, 8 o'clock. And then I'm like, come back at 3, we got your girl. And my parents were like, we are not leaving. I'm not leaving my baby girl on this college campus. Like, I don't know what's about to happen. And so parents like hung out. And so I was like, well, y'all can stay, but don't eat the food, because I did not order extra food thinking like folks' mamas was going to hang around, right? So after that first year, we were like, well, if parents are going to come and stay, we should do something for them. We should have a workshop for them. And so that was when I reached out to Nikki and said, can you come and can you put on a workshop for our parents? Because they needed resources too. I mean, and when you think about it, yes, we can inspire these girls for a Saturday. Like we can just pour into them. But the other 364 days, like they are home with their parents and their family. And so the parent workshop in some ways was even more important, because it was like, parents, here are tools for you to keep encouraging your daughter and your sons when they come home with a math problem that they don't understand, when they're ready to quit, and so we gave our parents resources. We gave them handouts, like here are the top 20 questions to ask your daughter's guidance counselor, just resources to really help them be successful. A lot of these parents were in similar school districts. And so we would put them in groups based on where they lived so that they could form like a parent community. And so if there's any takeaway from the conference, I think this was the biggest thing that I learned, is to get parents connected. And because, some of these girls are first gen, and so they don't have parents who've gone through the college process. And so those parents, don't always know how to encourage or, where to direct their kids, or what summer opportunities are available, right? And so just giving parents, like, here's a folder that has all of these resources, here's how you can kind of pour into your kids, and then here's how you can build this community among like-minded parents, I think was just transformational for them. And so for me, this was something that I learned after doing the conference, and something that I really take away every year. We do something for parents as well to make sure that they are included and they have the resources to help their daughter be successful. 2015, y'all, I'm like, wait a minute, JPL is down the street and Claudia works there. Why don't I invite her to come and give a keynote? So we had my mentor come back, my goodness, how many years later? 12 years, 13 years later. And so it was really great for me to reconnect with Claudia, just love on her. I think she talked about the Cassini mission and just poured into our girls. And so it was like a full circle moment, because I'm like, Claudia, you inspired me, and now I'm inspiring these girls, and now you're going to inspire them. It was just like, I felt like we should get in a circle and sing Kumbaya. This was a great moment, but 2.5 months later, Claudia passed away. And, in some ways this was, it was really hard for me to see that not 3 months after she spoke at our conference, she passed away from breast cancer. And, I remember when I saw her, when she came to speak, and she was, kind of frail, and she walked with a cane. And I was just like, why does Claudia have a cane, and she didn't say, I've got cancer, but she went down the steps just slowly, and she got down there and she lit up. And it was really just confirmation for me to see her at this stage in her life. Like, cancer is, eating through her body. And she's like, I want to come and pour into these girls. Like, I want to come and inspire them, and, drive all the way to Claremont so that I can connect with them. And so that moment left a lasting impression for me. I think it's one of the reasons that I love pouring into my girls and love doing these things that really bring me joy, because you don't know how much time you have. And she was, up until her last moment, pouring into the next generation of young women. And so I really just take that to heart. Let me share a bit about igniting passion in the public, and then I'll close and we can just have some conversation and some questions. So as Dwight mentioned, I've had an opportunity to do some amazing things. This TED Talk, look down there, y'all. It was a TEDx, okay, TEDx Claremont Colleges. So I wasn't like on the main TED stage. This was student run production. One of my students was on the organizing committee. And she was in one of my classes, and she's like, hey, Prof. Williams, we need some speakers for this TEDx event. Do you want, would you come? I think you might be good. And I'm like, then when is this, 2014? My kids are like, 2, 4, and 6 or something. Like, it was not a great time. And so I was like, I'm not sure I can do that. I've got a lot on my plate right now. And she's like, no, I think it'd be really good to have you. And, we really want to get some more Harvard Mud students to attend. So maybe if we get a prof, they would come. Like that was the selling point. That was the pitch, right? And I was like, oh, well, now that you've thought so deeply about it. And so I was like, well, fine, this will give me an opportunity to, I don't know, think about a talk for a general audience. And so I was like, sure, I can, and it's short. It has to be like a TED-like talk. So it's only 10, 15 minutes. And so I said, well, what's the topic? And she said, storytelling. And I'm thinking, do you even know what I do? Like, what? Why are you asking me to do a talk on storytelling? It's like, fine. So this talk was born, Own Your Body's Data. Talks about ways that we can take ownership of the data that we collect about ourselves to make better health decisions. I didn't know at the time it was going to become a TED Talk. So I gave it thinking, oh, these 250 students who have signed up will see it and it'll be great practice and that'll be the end of it. And so when it got featured on TED and sort of got upgraded, that was really kind of when the talk, blew up. Now my mom is probably half of those 1.8 billion because, she's going to watch her baby every day. But that's that. And so that really opened up opportunities for PBS. They saw the TED Talk and they were like, hey, we'd love for you to come and be a host of a show. And I'm like, right, yeah, like, this is clearly spam, but that really sort of opened that opportunity. And again, this was a talk I was going to say no to, right? This was a talk where I was just like, I don't think I have time for that. And sort of by saying yes, I think it has opened up so many other doors as well. I recently authored the book Power in Numbers, The Rebel Women of Mathematics, because I wanted to highlight the lives of, upcoming, current, and historical women in the mathematical sciences who have really just made a difference in our field and highlight not just their work, but just who they were as people, some of the struggles that they went through in order to be successful in the field. And so this was really a book that I would have wanted to read when I was in high school and, just to see other women who did mathematics. And, I was really late coming to know the work of a lot of these women. Winifred is one of the women that's featured. She was the first woman to get a PhD in math from Columbia University. And, one thing that her life talks about is what a struggle it was for that time for women to even be in the same room. Like she couldn't even take classes with the other men because she couldn't be in the classroom with them. So she was given her syllabus and a book, and she had to go basically do her PhD program as an independent study. After she finished her research, the board of trustees didn't want to award her a PhD because they were like, we don't want to be the first institution to give a woman a PhD in math. And so she had to continue to petition for the work that she had already done. And so just to see what these women had to go through in order to be successful in our field. The New York Times wrote about her, and notice that they talked about what she was wearing, right? She was modestly dressed in a walking dress of dark brown stuff trimmed with velvet. Like, I want you to be the first person to get a PhD in something. And they're like, yeah, but what was Dwight wearing though? What kind of suit was that? Did you see his tie? Really, why is that newsworthy? But she was one of the first, and many women that came behind her had similar difficult experiences as well. Mary Ross is a Native American rocket scientist, and she often talks about the fact that, she was the only girl in a class full of guys, and that her family really discouraged her from going into the mathematical sciences because it was just like, this isn't the place of a woman. Like, who's going to marry you if you're a scientist? And so just to sort of see how far we've come and how women had to persevere in spite of even having support from their family. Many of you know Katherine Johnson. She was featured in the film Hidden Figures, recently passed away, gotten a Medal of Freedom from former President Obama. And so she did all of the calculations to, get folks to and from these voyages for Apollo 13. And so it was beautiful to sort of look back on her life, because when you go back in the NASA archives, notice that bottom picture, you see all of the men who were in the control room. And yet there were all these women who were working in the background, doing all of the math that was necessary for the mission to be a success. And then the last third of the book talks about some modern math mavens. Eugenia Chang is one of them. She's been featured here with Stephen Colbert. And, she really has been sort of a pioneer recently in helping people understand that math can be fun and creative and not just about memorizing formula. Because often when the public thinks about math, it's not in a really exciting and interesting way. It's in a way that's like, I just need this in order to do my taxes. Right. And so she's really been a huge proponent of thinking about how we can excite the public in mathematics. And so it was really great to feature her and do some fun stuff with her as well. I want to show you a clip from some of the work that I've been doing with NOVA. This NOVA Wonders was a 6-part series that looked at some of the biggest questions in science. And initially when I was partnering with NOVA and they were like, oh, we want you to co-host, I was like, well, like I'm at a, small liberal arts 4-year college. Like I'm not at the forefront of research, when you think about these science documentaries. And so I really sort of pushed back at them, like, why is this a good fit? And what do you hope that I bring to the screen? And so, part of it was really the fact that data shows up in all of these questions. What's living in you? What are animals saying? Can we build a brain? Can we make life? What's the universe made of? At the core of all of them is data and how we extract information from this data that we're collecting and that we're seeing. And so that was sort of a common thread throughout those 6 one-hour episodes. And so anytime anything with data came up or anything mathematical, I got to come on and be like, let me explain this to you. And so that was really fun. But also I think, NOVA really felt like they wanted to inspire the next generation and thinking about who their audience is, the kids that are watching public television, the diversity of those kids, and making sure that they showcase that diversity on screen. Because often in the 80s and the 90s, their experts were like Nobel Prize winners, right? And Fields medalists. And so when you look at that list, who does that list look like and who does it end up inspiring? And so they really wanted to make sure that they put together a show that showcased the diversity and the excellence in science and math. Y'all, this was out of my professor wheelhouse. So this is just some pictures from some of the recordings that we would do. And Julia Court is one of the executive producers at NOVA. And here she is like coaching me, because I'm just, how we lecture, like, here's the information and let me explain it to you. And she's like, Talithia, you got to be exciting, because people will turn the channel. They have the power of the remote. They're not stuck in your class for 50 minutes. They don't have to be there. And so she'd be like, all right, like we got to liven it up. We got to be excited. And so that was always in the back of my head, like people have a remote. They have a remote. They will turn away if you don't make this interesting. And then Andre Fenton and I, one of my co-hosts in that upper right picture there. So we taped in Boston. NOVA's based in Boston. And so we were in the design district downtown. And so we walk into this open warehouse space and I'm thinking like, this is not gonna make a good show. Like I really should have donated when they did those PBS, donation marathons back in the day, because the budget is real low. But we were in this space, and in this particular picture, this was for the Can We Build a Brain? And so they're like, we're gonna do some animation. We're gonna have a brain just come down in the middle of you. And we want you to open your arms and welcome the brain into the space, right? And Andre and I are like, so what angle, when you say open, are we starting here and going up? Are we going more out? Is it oblong? What's the speed that the arms should drop? Like we were so scientific and they were like, just feel it, just open, just feel it. And it's gonna come down. And we were like, where's it gonna start? Should we look at it? So So it's going to be in this clip. And then a lot of the work was actually in the background. So I got to do a lot of voiceover to read some of the background narration as well. So here's a clip from Nova Wonders.
Inside a human brain, there's about 100 billion neurons.
And each one of them can connect to 10,000 others.
And from these connections comes
Here it is.
Everything.
The human brain can compose symphonies, beautiful works of art. It allows us to navigate our world, to probe the universe, and to invent technology that can do amazing things. Now, some of that technology is aimed at replicating the brain that created it. Artificial intelligence, or AI. But has it even come close to what these babies can do?
For ages, computers have done impressive stuff. They crack codes, master chess, operate spacecraft.
But in the last few years, something has changed. Suddenly, computers are doing things that can seem much more human. Today, computers can see, understand speech, even write poetry. How is all this possible? And how far will it go?
Could we actually build a machine that's as smart as us?
One that can imagine, create, even learn on its own?
How would a machine like that change society?
How would it change us? I'm Rana El-Kalioubi.
I'm Andre Fenton.
I'm Talithia Williams. And in this episode, Nova wonders, can we build a brain? And if we could, should we?
Hey, no, we can't build a brain. No, we shouldn't, even if we could. So more recently, I've gotten to work on a new show, just a math show, and that I'm going to be hosting, called Zero to Infinity. And so we just wrapped up taping, guys. This is like fresh off the press. And so Zero to Infinity sort of takes a step back to look at, where did zero come from? When did zero get added to the number system? Why is that? And what is infinity? When we think about infinity, what does it mean? And so we've been able to do some really fun taping. This is me and Steven Strogatz at MoMath in New York City. We got to do like this pizza cutting scene where we were trying to help people understand, like, how would you find the area of a pizza, right? If you don't know anything about pie, and how do you find the area of a circle or of a pizza in particular? And one way that you could do is you could cut it into slices and then arrange those slices into a parallelogram. And so that's what we did here, because we can take the area of a parallelogram easier than we can a circle. And so we sort of do this just to help people think about infinity, because if these slices were to get infinitely smaller and smaller and smaller, it would converge to a rectangle, which we know the area of. And so this has been really fun for me to think about, how do you take these concepts like infinity and break it down so that an audience, of middle, high schoolers, lifelong learners can understand these concepts that we can sometimes take for granted. I also got to, travel to other places and just do really fun things and meet amazing people. Those bottom two pictures are in an observatory in Arizona, looking at space. And so often when we think about infinity, it's natural to think about space and this infinite distance of stars being away. And so that was a fun session to do. I did a session up top there with a Paralympic archer to sort of think about, when an arrow is moving through space, it's sort of moving at this instantaneous time and space. And so that was great because, here's this amazing, Paralympian winning archer. And, here I am with both arms and I can barely hit the target. He's like bullseye every time. And so it was great, not just to talk about the mathematics of it, but to highlight the lives of these amazing folks. And then Eugenia Chang and I are down there. This was in Chicago, doing a segment as well. And so this has really been wonderful for me to think about how this passion really kind of grew out of this reluctant TED Talk, I'll say, somewhat reluctant, but has given me an opportunity to do these things that I really love and enjoy. Last thing I'll end on, some of you may have been at this meeting. This was the joint math meetings early in Denver, I believe. And I always love to try to, you know, make my family a part of these events and bring them along. You know, I want my boys to see that women do math, right? And women are mathematicians, and to really not just see themselves in the field, but just know that the field is diverse and to be comfortable in it, you know. And so often I'll bring them to the national meetings, but if I have something to do, I'm like, oh, mommy's got to go be on this panel or give this talk. I'll be back, you know. And so I had such an event. I was invited to do a panel. I think this was for the AWM. It was like math and motherhood, right? So we're talking about how do we do mathematics and how are we moms? And my son is like, Mom, can I come? Can I come? And I'm like, no, because Mama's going to be on stage. And like, you know, you get antsy. You can't sit there for 50 minutes. And so he's coming up on stage and then coming around and then he's going back down. And there was a mom in the audience who like gave him some yarn and he plays with that for a minute, you know, and I was like, thank you, Mom, random mom, you may be on today. Thank you. Then he comes back up and I'm like, Micaiah, Mommy just needs you to be still until this is over and like we can play. Like, I knew I shouldn't have said yes to you coming, you know, because I'm literally like, you know. So I was like, just sit right here, just sit next to Mommy and just like, here's my phone. Play on my phone, it's on mute. And so I'm like, this is great. Like I have mastered the ability of like balancing family, motherhood, and mathematics. And so at the end, someone comes to me and they're like, so I just wanted you to see what your son was doing while you were giving the talk. My baby is down there. Look at him. At least he's paying attention. Like he is watching, he is learning, he is into it. He literally poked his head out of the table, y'all. Poked his head out and watched the entire time. And I was just like, wow. But I loved it. It was so great because he was just like there to learn. And it was sort of literally the picture of math and motherhood is my kid down there under the table, you know, watching his mom on this panel. So I want to end on that note and really just encourage you to continue to do the things that you're passionate about. Bring the people in your life that you're passionate about, make them a part of what you do. And you never know when you might have a family member with their head sticking out from under the table. So thank you. And I want to open the floor for questions and conversations. So thanks so much.